All right, everybody. I wanted to talk today about how I learned how to scream. So, is this going to be the perfect video that teaches you how to do all the screaming things and all that kind of stuff? Is there really ever that kind of video for anything where you just learn all the things you need? No. So this is just me sharing my story, how I musically started to acclimate and figure some of these things out, why I figured them out, why I felt like I needed to figure them out, some of the references, some of the pitfalls, all that kind of stuff. So I want to talk about that. If you're interested in that, come join me and we'll have a chat. So, like I said, I'm going to give some exercises here, hopefully, and share some wisdom on how these things work, how they should work, all that kind of stuff. And like I mentioned, how I learned how to do them. Now, I haven't been singing yet today. I definitely have not been screaming yet today. So some of my examples might not be the most, out of the gate amazing things you've ever heard. But slowly but surely, we'll get up and running. Now, way back when I was about 24, 25, I did not grow up, first of all, listening to metal music. I was not somebody, I've always been more of a drawn to melancholy, sad music, and that's more of me in my soul. I was never rageful and angry, so metal music didn't tend to appeal to me as much. I'm talking about straight up fucking screaming and very, very upset music. So when I started putting up some covers on YouTube years ago, some people started reaching out to me, and they thought that I was involved in grunge and loved grunge. I don't really, but because of the way I sounded and stuff, they were like, "Dude, I got a band, you got to join." And it was usually heavier material, and it didn't mean that I was against it. I tend to be a writer that reacts to music, and that tends to be how I write music too. Whether I come up with something, whether I'm hearing it, whether I'm channeling it, however it's getting to me, I'm just taking the information in and reacting to it in an imaginative, creative, musical way, and then sending it back. So if somebody, that is writing music or sending me music that I do like and I enjoy, or I admire that person and all this kind of different stuff, if it's of an angrier place, I can definitely go to that place and start to emote through that and find things to be fucking angry about. Or just, it doesn't always mean that that kind of music needs to be angry, but you know what I'm saying. So that did indeed happen a couple times. I had some people from Seether reach out to me. I had some people from Breaking Benjamin reach out to me. I had some, and what really stuck was a guy named Doc Coyle. He's now in a band called Bad Wolves. He was in a band called God Forbid for a long, long time. That's the metal type of stuff I'm talking about. I never, still to this day, really haven't ever listened to God Forbid. Sorry if you have. And he started sending me some demos. I really dug them, and I was excited about the opportunity. And I was young and stupid. But anyway, I started noticing very quickly that I had no fucking idea what I was doing in terms of singing. Not only singing, but when it came to like aggressive vocals and screaming. I had a way of distorting my voice, and I really liked it, but it was also unhealthy. I could only sing about 3 songs like that, and my vocal cords, everything would start going downhill. So I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable, especially when I get in a room with people that know what the hell they're doing, and then it's like, I can sing like 3 songs, sort of. So I think the first step was starting to learn how to sing. I bought some courses, read some books. I did things like that and slowly started getting up and running. I've never taken a lesson, never had a lesson to this day, but I bought courses from a guy named Brett Manning. That helped a lot. Extraordinary courses and very thorough. There's a book by a guy named Jamie Vandera. Never really liked many of his courses, but the book helped me a lot. And then, people along the way. YouTube didn't really exist as much back then. Like with just typing in like how to cook anything, and then there's 18,000 videos. So it didn't exist in that way, so it wasn't like that as much. But still, there was enough information to get up and running and help. Then, being of that idea and that screaming and the metal and all that stuff, you've probably already seen and heard and know about Melissa Cross. She made these DVDs way back then called The Zen of Screaming. Never want to come on here to just shit on anybody or just be negative, but those DVDs suck. They're like a hook and bait type of thing, and she seems like a lovely person. And I never had a lesson from her either. My guitarist, Doc, was going to her for free a couple times because I think he was a part of the actual DVDs. But anyway, you buy one DVD, you barely get any information. So then you're like, I got to buy the second one. And then you barely get any information. You just get little tidbits of information. What they tend to be, if you've never seen them or you're interested in them, is advertisements for going to her. So then you do reach out to her, and then about 12 years ago or something, I think it was $385 for an hour lesson. And I could not afford that back then, nor would I probably want to pay that now. Anyway, so hearing those things, putting those pieces together, I started to find some things I could mimic as musicians do that were starting to guide me down a path of what the fuck I'm trying to do with this screaming thing. If you're getting into screaming, or if you're starting to wonder about screaming, one of the best things you can focus on, in my opinion, is vocal fry first. Fry is almost always a great part of a scream because it's just that real tension breakup. It sounds like taking an amp or a guitar or something and turning it up to the point where it's just starting to distort. It is an illusion in that you're not pushing the voice in and of itself so hard that it's starting to break up. So let's chat about that as we move forward too, because that's a very big misconception. But anyway, one of the good things about this, I should get an endorsement from this company, but they probably wouldn't give me one, those fucks. As we get into vocal fry, or as we talk about that, what is vocal fry? Vocal fry typically is reserved for, if you look on Instagram right now and look up Miley Cyrus, there is just video after video of her saying the part of the journey that you remember anyways. And she's got vocal fry, and then people linking it up with terrible things. And it's funny, but it's also mean. Anyway, that's vocal fry. So the vocal cords themselves have enough chord closure, but they're going like that. When we go from chord closure to just ever so slightly open chord closure and push a tiny bit more air across, we get vocal fry. But if we go more into the screaming realm and still stay quiet, we have a fry scream. Now, you can notice I'm being very quiet there, and that's for good purpose because, like I said, I'm not warmed up, but we want to talk about moving into all these things, and that's a necessary part of this. As I figured out how to make that sound, and it wasn't overnight, and it was sometimes working better than others, and sometimes you're using more force to try to get there, recognize, out of the gate, you don't need to be loud to do these things. If you watch Melissa Cross, she's always super quiet, which is, was always a weird deterrent too, because you're like, can you fucking actually scream? But anyway, you can be very quiet and make these noises. Actually, any of the distorted spaces, resonators, whatever you want to call them, can be found in terms of placement in a quiet way. And then you start to learn how to push into them from the diaphragm and make them louder. But just like anything else, if you can't maintain a certain level of compression or chord closure, then you're going to start pushing too much air, using too much pressure, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, if you're following along still, if you can try to make that sound, you can try to go from vocal fry anywhere in your range. Right there was almost me moving through my entire range with vocal fry. So then pick a note in your chest, I would imagine, and try to think about whispering like that at the same time. So we're pushing just a little bit of extra air over those vocal cords. And the sound that you're getting is, once again, the sound of your vocal cords, but they're beating together more erratically in a chaotic manner. So you kind of get a little bit of a note, but you also get a little bit of that distorted So if I go now, if you can start to make that sound, the way I went about this was that every day when I would drive to work or do whatever I had to do, it was all at the time driving, I would take songs that were heavier and I would keep making that sound in different pitches throughout the song. So it was kind of like I was adding to the song, but I was just kind of driving around, and just moving it around. So the important thing about this, and I can already tell people's eyes are going to roll because I say this all the time, if you follow me, is that singing is vowels. So it's not necessarily the greatest thing to go try to say words and try to emote through it and try to scream and try to, all that kind of stuff. It's more important for me personally to relay the idea of sing your vowels through this. So mouth shape has a hell of a lot to do with the way that the scream sounds. Right there, you heard more of an O. Oh. But if I go to an A, ah. So if I go, that changes the sound of it dramatically. These people that are like, I want to sound really deep and scream like a monster. That has to do with low larynx. Lowering your larynx and yawning. But it has nothing to do with as much of, having a deep voice that helps. But anyway, that's how I started learning how to scream. Then I knew nothing about diaphragmatic support. A lot of the courses I read about and everything, it was very cryptic or very sporadically mentioned. So I was just like, whatever the hell that means. That stuff came later for me. But as you learn how to support diaphragmatically and breathe diaphragmatically, I have plenty of videos about that. You start to push into these spaces if you can and start to try to find volume. Now, I'll try to show you that as well, even though I'm not warmed up. So there you can tell I'm starting to add some volume into it, starting to sound a little bit more badass. If it's splitting your chords apart, then you haven't quite built the strength in the coordination or the resiliency to hold your chords together or to hold that sound together. So once again, go back to and just make it quiet. Now, I lost my goddamn train of thought because I was thinking about a couple different things I wanted to talk about while I moved forward. Diaphragmatic support's always going to come into play, but like I said, remember that you can find these distortional spaces without being loud. Anybody that's trying to be loud out of the gate to find these screams, you might find some good things, but it's not going to be very sustainable, and you're going to hurt yourself in the long run, and it's just not good. So there's two things I want to cover here. First of all, as you're practicing these things, keep the time and the amount that you practice them to a minimum. I would not be practicing right out of the gate for like an hour a day. But as you do, and as I know that you will do, because I did too, check in with your head voice, check in with your falsetto. If you feel like you're hurting your voice, the first thing to go will be your head voice, or your bridge will become bigger. So you'll have more of a and you can't get your chord closure on the upper part of your voice. So so my voice everything's all gravy. But as I scream, as I put a lot of pressure on my voice and really wear myself down, I might push too much air over for an extended period of time, and I might hurt my vocal cords a little bit, or they might swell erratically, and I might find myself starting to lose my voice or feeling hoarse. Check in and see, can you still get chord closure up in head voice? If you can't, like this, there's a chance you're hurting your voice. You might want to stop for today. Now, I want to plant this seed in your mind as well before we move on to some of these other distorted spaces. This is something I don't really hear people talk about. I don't watch many videos on this stuff anymore because I'm too busy making them. So I want you to understand how pressure and tension work with the voice and with the body. Things swell, things open, things stretch. The body is malleable. The throat is malleable. These spaces are malleable. When we are pushing into these spaces and we're learning how to push into these spaces, I don't like to mention the term compression very much because when people are untrained and they haven't spent too much time utilizing this type of stuff, they tend to think about compression harshly, and they hold their breath back and they get very tight and they tighten up in the neck and all these things. But then if you watch me doing a lot of this stuff, you'll see that I'm not that tense and that I'm not that tight. It's because, once again, I don't like referring to them things like that. But anyway, as you learn about them and as you build them and as you push tension into certain areas of your voice, let's say that you're staying in your chest and you're getting louder and louder in your chest and you're starting to belt and kind of push your voice straight out of your head and be nice and loud. As you do that, imagine the tube of your throat and that hard palate up here on the top, like this. As you continue to press into that, that is going to expand just like anything else, just like a water balloon as you push more and more water into it. Can you guess what happens when you stop then? That space kind of stays like that, but it also kind of gets a little worn out. So when you come back for the next song, you have to use a little bit more pressure to fill up that space, just like a water balloon. You would need a little bit more water to then open it up and get it back to where it was, and then letting it go again. It will relax. So that's what happens in the voice as well. Keep that in mind. And what I mean by that, hopefully it's not too mysteriously weird or whatever, is that as you use more force, as you are louder, all that kind of stuff, know that you're slowly kind of going to start going downhill. So it's a balance game. Tension and singing and all these things are a balance game of how you're applying pressure, how you're utilizing that pressure, how you're not going too far overboard, and you're going to do a lot of this stuff. But anyway, I think my advice would be keep trying to practice being a little bit quieter and trying to find these spaces in a healthier way without going fucking loud. Everybody wants to be loud. Everybody wants to be loud. But go quieter and find a nice quality of tone in these things, and then try to bring in your volume. But for the most part, it's not always needed. Some of these heavy vocalists that you hear from, Lamb of God and stuff like that, ironically, they're being pretty quiet. It actually, a lot of times to me, was another reason why I never was drawn to the music, because to me, it gets silly sometimes because they have to use the mic and they're being kind of quiet. But it's supposed to be this fucking monster crazy thing. It's not. It's ironic, like I said. It's actually a lot quieter than that. And like I said, if you can maintain a nice tone and a nice sound and find that, really shape your words, really enunciate, say the things you want to say through it and whatever, that's great. Try to bring a little bit more volume into it. But like I said, volume is not the key here. The sound is the key. That doesn't mean you should be going and being super quiet, but hopefully you follow me on that. So like I said, pressure means more pressure. Tension means more tension. If you use too much air, imagine it like this. Your vocal cords breaking apart like this. It's like pushing water into a crack in the wall. It's going to start breaking open, and then you need more pressure, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully I've explained that decently well. Now, as we get into some of these other sounds, first of all, as always with me, practicing with me, one of the best things you can do, especially if you're learning how to mix or you're learning how to try to carry these sounds up and down, is take them with sirens, you can do them with lip bubbles, you can do them with a lot of things. You can do them, I have to find the damn straw for this so I can talk about it, but you can put water in a bottle with straw, and you can use it like that. But I have to find the straw so I don't look like a dickhead. Anyway, so do it with sirens. We'll do it right now. We'll start right here. I'm going to make that fry sound if I can, if you can follow me. And remember, we're keeping it nice and quiet, but we're going to do like O, because it's a nice O-shaped vowel, like a deeper O. It's nice and safe. It's very safe. And then we're going to do slides with it on sirens. Oh. As we go higher, try to yawn into the sound and drop your larynx so that you don't pull up more pressure and start going like this, which is the tendency for most people. Oh. I'm not doing full fry scream here, but I just wanted to show you. Move them around like this. And you don't even need to do it on a specific thing here. Just move from the top of your range kind of to the bottom. Now, I'm using some different spaces because I didn't warm up into this and I don't scream that much anymore. Anyway, let's talk about those spaces that you hear me kind of moving into there. Now, there's mixed voice and things like that happening as well, but I made videos about the 3 different distortional spaces you can use. There's the false chords above. Those are those. You can find those by trying to use an E vowel. You're always pointing towards the nose. And trying to find those. Those will kick in different ways with screams, with distortion. The more you can kind of get away from them and be as high as you can, the better off you'll be. And I mean like with a heavier distortion, like a singing distortion, not just a scream. But they are going to kick in different ways. They're going to oscillate. They're going to make sound. So once again, you would try to find those. This is very chest voice centered. We can't really take this up higher after our bridge, passaggio. Now, if I take that sound, and you can find that. That took me a couple weeks to get better at. We can see how I can use E to find it. I want to try to add vocal fry underneath that to create even more of a diabolical scream, right? So I'm going to try to go, so you can tell right there, both of those are going, and they're vibrating at the same time. Now, like I said, I haven't done this stuff in a long time, but I wanted to talk about it. Third, we have an upper palate, soft palate type of distortion. That's my favorite. Sometimes harder for me to utilize, but it also gets into these mixed muscles that I talk about and that I want to always keep talking about that people can find, or hopefully find. Those muscles up there are my mixed muscles and are helping me to carry the weight of chest and go over my bridge and all that kind of stuff. As I focus on them, I'm going to try to focus backwards with my placement. Your placement being where your voice is shooting out in the head. Where you're placing the voice. Distortion always happens far back. I never knew what that meant when I heard somebody say it, and I kept paying attention to it. And then I noticed, okay, yeah, that's why people are putting their heads down and keeping themselves like this when they're screaming, because we're pushing the sound backwards. So I'm going to go and make something like UNG, and I'm going to try to push it a little bit farther back, and I'm going to see if I can find a distortion up on the soft palate where your uvula hangs down. Now, there's a little bit of a difference. Hopefully you can tell. So you can tell I'm rattling two different spaces. But this one I can take higher. This one exists in an upper realm, so I'm not down here building as much tension. I'm building tension up here. I can take that one higher. So as I get into that, I can try to combine some of these spaces and make more of a scream that might work for me. But one of the good things I wanted to mention here too, and I know I've talked about a lot of this stuff and I've probably talked too long, but getting to know these spaces and being very conscious of what's happening in the body. I had lost my singing voice for about 5 years, started losing my actual real voice too. I quit music, and then I started losing my singing voice, which is also an ironic thing because most people are like, you lost your voice because you didn't sing right, you piece of shit. But no, that's not the case. I quit music, and then I started losing my singing voice. Then eventually I started losing my speaking voice. It hurt every day. And then eventually now I'm getting back and getting it back and getting it back. Having said that, I found my mixed voice again by screaming. Actually, it was by getting frustrated and just screaming to like fucking Static X in my car. The good thing about that is that as you pay attention to these spaces, these compression points that you can find, that kind of stuff, you'll notice other people doing it too. Static X is a great example if you want to scream along to that music. That was a lot of fun stuff. But he's staying in this upper range a lot of times. He'll dive down here, but he's always, no. He's staying up here. So that he can rise from the note. But he's actually being, once again, relatively quiet and keeping things controlled. Point is, again, I noticed my mixed muscles, those ones, up there, by screaming and by trying to control my sound. So there's a lot of experimenting to do with this. There's a lot of fun to be had, mostly in your car by yourself and not, in your parents' basement or wherever you're trying to figure this shit out. People don't like it. So you got to find time and the place to practice these things. Anyway, to reiterate, keep it quiet. Learn about your diaphragmatic support so that you can start pushing into it from the right place and trying to find volume from the right place. It does not come from the neck. Trying to find this upper one, I'll try to show you that too. It's hard to combine all these things. And like I said, think about these as separate places. I like to warm them up separately as well. There's warming up the voice, and then there's warming up these other things as well that are oscillating and vibrating and all that. So I like to treat them like that and warm them up accordingly. If you want to join me on Patreon, I talk about more of this stuff in more detail, share all kinds of different extra things, behind the scenes things, tracks from my new band, all kinds of different stuff. And I greatly appreciate that. Anyway. oh, can't even do it. Those are two of those vibrating at the same time. Oh, that was embarrassing. So, I hope some of this helped. I appreciate you following me on my journey of figuring these things out. Keep in mind, as you learn these things, last thing I'll say, everybody wants to emote through music and be dramatic and say the things that they want to say and say, I fucking hate you and I'm going to scream into the mic and all that stuff. But emotion comes a little bit later. Teach your body how to do these things, just like weightlifting. You don't want to go fucking angrily weightlift. You're going to hurt yourself. Try to teach your body how to do these things in a safer, more controlled manner. And then as you learn that and your body learns what it's trying to do and remembers, then you can try to emote through that. Same thing with guitar, same thing with drums. You're teaching the body what to do so that you can start to exist in that realm without thinking as much and then, move through that. So once again, thank you for joining me. I will see you again soon.